When we understand how our minds work and what shadow entities like monitoring spirits want from us, we know how to subvert any attack. We have to understand two different types of negative spiritual influence: what they are, why they happen, and how to take away their power. One is spiritual attack, and the other is entity attachment. I know that this can be a touchy subject because those of us who have been doing the healing work, we know our lives are about us. We are the creators of our lives, and we don't want to promote a victim mentality or disempowerment. But it's extremely important to acknowledge what's going on. There are things happening that need to be talked about. So first, let's talk about spiritual attack. When this is happening, negative entities aren't trying to break us. They're trying to amplify our fear, our stress, our anxiety. The goal here is to make these feelings so intense that we feel incapable of moving through what we're experiencing in order to get us to fall back into our comfort zone and keep us managing our insecurities, our shame, our fear, or whatever it is in the same way we always have, instead of finding a way to fully resolve it. The idea is to keep us from expanding and progressing. The pain, the shame, the guilt, the regret, the embarrassment, the feeling of powerlessness becomes too much to bear, so we fall back into the same way we've been trying to control it or cope with it, instead of allowing it to fully come to the surface to be processed. This happens when frequencies on the electromagnetic spectrum are sent to us that are on the very high and low ends that can trigger the sympathetic nervous system. They can cause issues with sleep, increased heart rate, and increased blood pressure, which can cause sudden anger, stress, and anxiety. This kind of attack can also happen to someone we are karmically entangled with, where it pushes their behaviors to an extreme beyond what is actually in the soul contract between two people. Through these frequencies, their emotional state can be intensified to impact us. They already touch our wounds as they were meant to so that we can recognize them and heal them, but this can be amplified in a way that makes it feel like there is an impenetrable wall in front of us, but that's not actually true. We either have to dig really deep to find a more empowered perspective on the situation, or we have to push a little harder through the barrier. A lot of times, this comes through behaviors with the intention of some kind of control. Shadow entities will assist with giving power to those who desire control that is not in the highest good of all, while positive entities support us in gaining our own inner empowerment. Something that can also help is to view it as a game that you refuse to lose. Become determined that you're not going to let anything take you down. Every time the negative self-talk, the fear, the insecurity, the doubt, the loss of hope begins to creep in, you refuse to let it take you down. You become determined to find a solution, to resolve it, to transmute it, to find hope in the dark, because the help is always there if we're open to it. This perspective allows us to step outside of ourselves and take an observer role, so we're not so consumed by our emotions, and we can find solutions. Spiritual attack isn't just something that amplifies how you're currently feeling. It can also come out of nowhere and completely change your mood, where you begin to focus your thought on things that bring up anxiety. It's important to note what's happening and just sit with it and allow it to pass without spiraling. Try to regain control of your mind as best you can. Okay, so now let's talk about entity attachment. This is a lot darker than spiritual attack, and the intention is very different. I just want to say that this can happen to anyone. This isn't reserved for the people that we might consider to be bad or the worst in our society, but it can definitely contribute to the creation of them. Fear or a lack of hope can open up a space for entity attachment and keep the attachment clinging on. It can also coincide with spiritual attack to have a very strong impact on us. The idea is to essentially infect our minds with a mind virus of darkness through dark thoughts from various influences or dark dreams. I'm not necessarily talking about thoughts that make you want to do harm to another person. I just mean thoughts that make the world seem very bleak and heavy, that make it difficult to see the good. These dreams that we can have will really stand out from the rest. You will know if you've had one because it's the kind of dream that you probably don't want to repeat to anyone else because of how disturbing it is. Because of the nature of it, you question how your mind could have possibly conjured something so disturbing. And what you felt in the dream will also bleed through into your day, impacting your mood. It can even be a specific dream that repeats over many years. We can, of course, have dreams that induce fear that are just coming up from our subconscious, but what I'm talking about here is on another level. When we become infected with this mind virus, we can begin to believe that all that exists is pain, suffering, heartache, betrayal, discord, disharmony, darkness, because that's all that seems to be present in our reality. So, if this is just the truth of life, then why choose to reach for the light? Why choose to act from a place of pure intentions if we are so sure that it will not bring good things into our lives? Plus, we see everyone else acting from a place that lacks integrity. So, why muster up the strength to do differently? Because that can be incredibly difficult. We begin to lose hope and faith in that which is good and pure. Purity is that which isn't muddled by fear, limitation, and disempowerment. When we lose hope, we can either want to completely check out of life, or we feel the need to control, deceive, dominate, manipulate, or punish. This reaching for external power can begin in a very small or subtle way where we don't really recognize it as an issue, like trying to subtly manipulate someone's perception of us, which I think most of us have done in one way or another. Or we can try to subtly steer someone in the direction that we want them to go. We can often feel that what we're doing is justified, which is why it's so important to catch these thoughts early before they escalate. These negative entities will either help us in attempting to gain external power that never fulfills, or they will bring pain and chaos into our lives. They can only give us a false sense of power from power over external circumstances, not true inner power. There will always be a feeling of needing more and more to fill the internal void. Entity attachment can also manifest in a purely internal way versus external. We can begin to cave in internally in a way that impacts our health, sparks thoughts of self-harm, or makes us want to check out of life. Protection from entity attachment comes from seeing the good around us, not from a place of avoidance, but from a place of being honest about the negative things in our environment and choosing to believe that more exists than that. We have to have hope. We have to believe that good things can come for us. We have to believe the world will change, and we have to understand that the only way this change can happen is by each of us choosing to act the best that we know how and the best that we can with pure intentions, honesty, and integrity, despite our fear of what could come from that. This is what creates our desired reality. We cannot fight darkness with darkness, and we cannot create light from darkness. We have to believe in our power to create change within and without through purity, not fear.